Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in this big wide world in which we live in. Today I thought I would sit down and film a very quick little ayahuasca video. This is a video that came to me after I finished editing my video series. So even though I've already posted that series, I felt the need to film this video because I think it's quite interesting. And I think you guys might be interested in knowing some of the different types of experiences that you can have on ayahuasca. So I'm not going to get into what is ayahuasca and all the ins and outs and my experience personally. But if you do want to see that, I have a bunch of videos on my channel talking about my ayahuasca experience and breaking down each ceremony one by one. So basically where I went to participate in ceremonies in Costa Rica, they say that there are 4 main experiences that you can have. So I'm going to delve into each one and we're going to talk about it a little bit. So if you are preparing for an ayahuasca ceremony, if you're about to do ayahuasca, if you're thinking of doing ayahuasca, this is kind of a general gist of what you can maybe expect. I'm sure at least one of these will probably happen to you at some point in your journey. So the first is body. This basically means any bodily changes that occur whilst under the influence of the medicine. So when you drink ayahuasca, a bunch of different things can happen to your body physically. The most common one that most people talk about is purging by means of throwing up, or the other end, sweating, crying, laughing, yawning. These are all different types of purges that can happen. Because you're drinking this substance that changes the chemistry of your body can definitely react physically to this and lots of changes can take place. Most people do tend to throw up when they're in a ceremony. Not everyone. I didn't throw up in all my ceremonies, but most people did. And that's not really something to be scared of. It's basically a way of releasing physical toxins or emotional blockages or trauma or anything that is stored in your body that needs to come out. And they basically say that when you take ayahuasca, she will get rid of everything that doesn't match her high frequency or high vibration. So anything that is of lower vibrations, any emotions like anger, resentment, hurt, fear, or physical pain, any of that will probably need to come out in some way, shape, or form, and throwing up is usually the most common way that this leaves your body. But you're not guaranteed to throw up. You may or may not also need to go to the bathroom on the other end. You might not make it in time. Some people don't. Most people do. Don't worry. You're probably not going to shit yourself. It may happen, but most likely it probably won't. You might excessively sweat or shake. That happens quite frequently. I sweated a bit. I didn't really shake, but some people will really shake and sweat profusely, and this is yet again your body's way of getting rid of things that are holding you back and things that are blocking you from raising your vibration and connecting with your soul. Yawning is another really common one. This was probably the one I experienced most in my ceremonies. I could not stop yawning, and it's so funny how when you say the word yawn or you think about it, your body automatically feels the need to yawn. Such an interesting concept that is. So yet again, yawning is another way your body can release things. I felt like my mouth, like my jaw was going to like split open. Like I was profusely yawning and yawning and yawning, and I'm going to stop talking about it because I feel like I'm just going to continuously yawn throughout this video. One more. The last thing that can happen physically is crying. I remember them explaining the exact reason for this, but I don't know it in great detail. But basically, long story short, ayahuasca does tend to work on your amygdala in your brain. And if you didn't know, your amygdala is basically your emotional center of the brain. That is the part of your brain that is responsible for a lot of the emotions that you may feel. So ayahuasca does work with this part of the brain. And this is why a lot of people say that a lot of emotions come up. They end up going on an emotional roller coaster because memories and emotion are all linked, and it kind of comes out in ayahuasca ceremonies. So crying is something that is emotions being released, basically. My first 2 ceremonies I cried a lot, but I didn't really feel like I knew what I was crying. Tears were just flowing, like non-stop flowing, and I've never had that before where I didn't even realize I was crying. Like usually if one were to cry, they would be like sobbing, but I randomly felt my face and it was sopping wet and tears were just streaming out of my eyes. Like I didn't even know I was crying until I physically felt my face, which was really strange to me because I haven't experienced that before. But yet again, this is another emotional release and emotional thing that can happen to your body when you're on the medicine. It's a good thing. It's all of this stuff that I'm talking about is good. Like none of it is bad. These are all positive things that can happen during a ceremony. Even though at the time they might be uncomfortable, they might not feel great. That is ayahuasca doing its work, and you just have to trust that all this stuff is happening for a reason. Every experience is unique, and it's like your very own personalized prescription from nature. That's how I like to think of it. So as if the camera angle is a little bit different, my camera died and I went downstairs and had some banana bread that I just baked, and now I'm back. Where were we? Basically, that is the first category of experiences you can have. Those were the body experiences. speaking of bodily experiences. So the next range of experiences fall under the category of Pinta. Basically, this refers to anything visual that can happen. I don't know exactly the science behind this. I assume obviously it has something to do with the chemical of DMT. When you have the brew, it's these two plants that mix together, and one of the plants allows for the DMT from the other plant to be able to flow throughout your body without it being broken down by a chemical that we usually have in our stomachs that won't let us experience what DMT is like. Pinta, basically referring to anything visual that can happen when you're on ayahuasca, and let me tell you, a lot of visual stuff can happen. My personal experience wasn't overly visual, but most people's tended to be really visual. People had out-of-body experiences. Some people crossed over with people that had passed. A lot of people saw animals, went to different dimensions, stuff like that. After all, it is a psychedelic, so with psychedelics usually comes some sort of visual experience. Not always. One of the head shamans there was telling me how the shaman that trained him didn't have any visuals for 5 years. So I think a lot of people expect to have a visual experience when they take psychedelics. That's kind of the thing that everyone gets most excited about, because they're like, oh, like I'm gonna trip out and see all these really trippy visuals. For me, it wasn't like that, but I know for a lot of people it is, so don't expect that to happen. But as I've said a million times, everyone's experience is different, so try not to have any expectations for your personal experience. So yeah, I guess this one's self-explanatory. Pinta, visuals, sometimes they're trippy, sometimes they're not. Can be a whole range of different things. For me, my visual experiences were really subtle. I saw some subtle sacred geometry, which is a very common thing to see on ayahuasca. The night sky was a bit altered for me as well, and the trees were like growing into the sky and stuff like that. So my visual experience kind of stops there, but a lot of other people had extremely visual experiences to the point where I could sit here and talk all day about some crazy stuff that happened. So I can only talk from my experience, but yes, ayahuasca can be very visual like most psychedelics, and Pinta is the word that kind of explains those visual experiences. Number 3 is the consult. This is when someone has a consultation with another being or a higher power, or it can kind of be anyone or anything. So this one's kind of broad. A lot of people will report to have experiences with aliens or extraterrestrial beings. Some people will have a consultation or interact with someone who's like a higher power, God, whatever you want to call it. Other people might have a consult with a passed on loved one. They might come through. As they do say, ayahuasca is an entry into the spirit world, so you can come across all sorts of beings and mystical things there. A lot of people report being in contact with machine elves. That's a really common one. Terence McKenna talked about that. And minions and jesters are also other common ones. Then there's sacred surgery, which if you guys want to hear about it, I did speak about it briefly in one of my videos, but I can make a whole video on that because I feel like that deserves its own video. But it's basically when you have like a celestial surgery on you from a being or an alien or another figure. They operate on you in ceremony. It's really hard to explain, but when you're in the ayahuasca world, it doesn't seem that far-fetched. But sacred surgery is another thing that would probably fall under this consult category. A consult is just any sort of interaction with another entity or being. It can also be an animal. It can also be a consult with your higher self. You could have an out-of-body experience and then have a conversation with your higher self and be getting information from that. So this can kind of be a lot of different things, and usually through these consultations you learn something about yourself. In the sacred surgery sense, something is repaired. This one really fascinates me because it's very interesting to hear people talk about their experiences with animals and aliens and beings and God and all this other crazy stuff. This stuff is so fascinating. Like how do you even explain that with words? And you probably think I sound absolutely crazy talking about this stuff, but it does happen. I have come across so many people that have had these out-of-body experiences or who have had these consultations with a variety of different entities. I've heard a range of different people talk about the different types of healing that they've gained from these consultations, so I guess that is the third category, the consult. And the fourth and final one that they talk about at Rhythmia, where I went, is nada. So nada actually means nothing, and a lot of people who have these nada experiences get really frustrated because they get nothing. This usually happens when you fall asleep in ceremony. So you might drink the ayahuasca and then you fall asleep and then you wake up and the ceremony's over. You might wake up and think, wow, nothing happened. I'm really annoyed because I feel like I got nothing. This might sound like not a great experience to have, but according to the shaman that were actually there, this is the best experience you can have, and I'm gonna tell you why. So basically, a nada is when Mother Ayahuasca puts you to sleep and you wake up and nothing happens. But a lot of the people who experience these will feel different when they wake up, or they might notice weeks later that there is a change or a shift. Usually nadas happen to people where either the experience that is being healed is too traumatic or difficult for you to be awake for, and instead of Mother Ayahuasca like making you relive this experience, she'll put you to sleep gently like a mother would and work on you and do all this healing, and you'll wake up and there'll be a shift or a change. So if this does happen to you, don't get discouraged. Usually it is something that is too difficult for you to relive, or on the other hand, it can also be ancestral healing. Mother Ayahuasca could be healing your lineage and something from before your time. A lot of the time in lineages there can be like a break, and then you might be feeling, let's say in this life you feel really depressed and you might be feeling something but you don't know why, or it might not feel like your sort of pain. This can actually be pain that's been passed on ancestrally and emotions that are passed on through your lineage. So a lot of the time you may experience anata either when it's too difficult for you to relive, or she might be healing something ancestrally that is from way back in time. Me personally, I didn't fall asleep in ceremony, but I know a lot of people did, and they were quite confused about this, and when they asked the shaman, they basically explained the concept of anata and how it's pretty much the ideal outcome. It's pretty much the greatest form of healing, which is really interesting because a lot of us would think that nothing has happened, but really a lot of healing does take place in these situations. We just aren't awake and aware of it at the time. But a lot of people will report down the line that they may no longer feel a certain way or a certain emotion about a situation, or they might feel lighter, or they might feel different but not really know why, because it may have not come up in ceremony, but this could have been worked on and healed while they were asleep. And that is the 4 things that the shaman at the specific retreat that I went to talked about. By no means is that everything that can happen in an ayahuasca ceremony. Obviously this is just like a really brief summary, but those tend to be like the 4 categories of things that can happen and ways in which Mother Ayahuasca works on you. So I hope you guys have found this video kind of interesting. I found this stuff super fascinating to learn about when I was there. We learned about this in one of the classes, so I thought I would share it with you guys today. In case you're thinking of doing ayahuasca, maybe this can kind of prepare you. Not that you can ever really be prepared because you don't know what's going to come up, but it can maybe give you a sense of what can happen during ceremony and maybe what to expect. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I have really enjoyed sitting down and talking about this stuff because I'm really passionate about it, and I'm really excited to go back eventually and work with ayahuasca again. So if you guys did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new to join the family, and if you guys want to keep up to date with my everyday life, you can follow me on my Instagram and Twitter. It's at emmygrace with 3 E's. You don't have to, but if you do want to see more of my face, then that's where you can do it. On that note, I'm gonna go, but I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in this big wide world, and don't forget to be kind to each other and be kind to yourselves, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye! Catch you later.